guys, I'm Aussie and welcome to my Football Manager 20 Tactics tutorial. And before we get started, if you are new to my channel, if you're just discovering me now, please do subscribe, have a look around. We usually have, we do have some Let's Plays going and other fun stuff as well. So yeah, welcome to the channel, and please do drop this a like and consider subscribing as well if you're finding it helpful. Now, tactics, that's what this is all about. Now, the first thing I have to say is that there is no one tactic that works for every team. It just doesn't exist. You might see some other videos out there that, the perfect tactic, win every game 6-0. Usually with those sorts of tactics, A, it's usually a team like Barcelona or Real Madrid, and a lot of that is down to the players. And B, different players play in different ways. There's no two teams that will work with the exact same tactic, never mind a tactic that will work across all teams all the time. So what I want to try and do in this tutorial is, rather than sort of teach you, will tell you one tactic that's worked really well for me, is basically give you, I guess, the tools to sort of work out your own tactic and set things up that will work, hopefully, to build you a winning team. Now, the first thing I always, what I always try and do, and I always think is important, is to build from the back. Now, what I mean by that is, obviously, you want the best defenders you can, but I always think get big, strong defenders, because what you can always do is, if you have big, strong defenders, you can sit back if they lack pace. You can sit back, sit deep, be compact, don't let other teams basically get in behind you, and you've got these big, strong defenders that can then head the ball away from, when you're defending, and also, you can play for set pieces. You can always then use them as attacking weapons at the other end of the pitch. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a pacey striker, but what happens is that if you've got a pacey striker, sure, you can play a high line, and then as soon as they try to go over your heads, your defense will be able to get back and sort of clear the ball that way. But if you're defending a set piece, you can't play a high line from a corner. You're going to be vulnerable at some point if you're weak in the air. So I always think, get your big, strong defenders. You can sit deep. You don't have to worry about them sort of attacking or pacey attackers getting in behind you. You have players that you can then use also as attacking weapons from set pieces. And yeah, I always think just build from the back. That is the way to do it. Now, if that is a tactic that you're going to look to do, you're sitting back here, generally you're going to want to be compact. You may not be, you can press the other team as well, that's fine. But generally they're going to, if you're sitting deep, they're going to come onto you. You're going to have a lot of space in here to attack. So if you've got big, strong defenders that are sitting deep, look for your pacey attacking players, because they're going to have space to run into just naturally. If you're deep, the other team's coming out at you, and then you'll have space in behind them. Now, no matter what sort of a striker you do have, what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you're attacking to your striker's strengths. So if you have, I'm trying to think who we have up front here, Bursut Berisha. Bad example. If we go, say Mayega. Okay, so Mayega here, who can play as a striker. We'll just move him up there so you can kind of see what I mean. Can play as a striker. What he does have is he's decent. Just do it this way. He's decent enough in the air. So if that was the case, if you've got a striker that's good in the air, crossing, you're probably going to want to sort of have the more floated crosses in, give them a chance to use their height and their strength to get above the defenders and head the ball in. But if you have sort of a more pacey striker, that's someone that's not good in the air, let's say Yule here, for example, because he is pacey, very, very pacey, but no jumping reach, no strength. If we sort of loop high balls into the box for him, he's just going to get beaten in the air every time. So what we would want with him is the low crosses, maybe whipped crosses as well, something that gives him the advantage. He can use his pace to get in behind the defenders, use his movement to get in. So always bear that in mind with what if you've got, and also you want to take into account the opposition defenders. If they have these big lumps of lads that are going to win everything in the air, chances are, unless you have someone that is as good in the air as them, there's no real point sort of floating in crosses, because chances are you're going to lose more than you win anyway. So then, use their strength against them and trying to get in the low crosses. Yeah, so that's that. And also with pacey players, you can look to pass into space, because that's going to try and then basically get them in behind the opposition players as well. Now, if you're using wingers, always think you want to play with width, because what that'll do, one of two things. Either you want to do either or of these two. I think if you're using shorter passing, you don't want to be too far apart, because if you're passing short and the players are this far apart, a short pass is going to struggle to find that the players around. But if you're passing not tempo, if you're passing more direct, then that's fine, because the passes are going to be more direct in any case. But anyway, back to playing with width, because what that's going to do, it's going to mean one of two things. Let's get back to this tactics screen. If your wingers are playing from wide areas, that means that the opposition fullbacks, they either need to play very wide to go and mark them and stop them from getting down the outside. What that's going to do is then obviously open up midfield to give your midfielders space to play in. Or if the other opposition defense decides to stay compact, your wingers are going to get down the sides of them. Then you can get crosses in. So if you are going to use wingers, I always think make sure that you're playing with width. And then equally, if you have good central midfielders that are good passers of the ball, you can still play with width, because again, what that's going to do is same sort of thing. If the opposition defense goes out to mark the wingers, it just gives your central midfielders more space to play in. If we go back to this screen here, so if the opposition are defending with width, you can see there's more space in between the players just naturally. In midfield, which will give you midfielders space to play in. Or if they're narrow, again, you'll see that there's space in wider areas for your fullbacks or your wingbacks or your wingers to attack into. So there you go. That's I always think that is important. Now, one thing that I think it can be misunderstood perhaps is team cohesion. Now, if your team cohesion is in the red, or the more red that it's in, basically, we can see here, so the green, we have a good level of understanding right now, the players. So the team's collective mental state is slightly improved. So general play positioning will improve during matches, and they're just more used to the way each other's playing. Now, that's not usually I don't think it's ever been the case when you take over a club, when you have new signings at the start of the year as well. It will affect that. What you want to make sure you're doing in that case is be more disciplined. Pull back the creative freedom, because they're not on the same page yet anyway. One player might play this stunning pass that nobody else is expecting. So until that team cohesion comes up, and again, you can find that in team dynamics, make sure that you're being more disciplined. It'll help. It'll improve your results. You may not score the goals as many, the beautiful free-flowing football goals that you like to see, but it'll stop you from conceding silly goals, giving the ball away in silly areas, and you will actually score more goals because of it, just being that little bit more structured, sort of limiting the creative freedom. Now, one big question I always find is when possession's lost, when to counter press, when to regroup. My basic rule for this is that if you're playing a passing team that's, again, short passing, if you've lost the ball, if they're passing, go and press them. Go and try and win it back. Put pressure on them to misplace a pass. Alternatively, if you're playing someone that's just playing a direct football, looking to just try and lump it over your head, get it out wide quickly, there's no point counter-pressing them, because all that's doing is, you're putting a little bit more pressure on them. If they're going to lump it anyway, get the players back behind the ball, be in a solid shape so that when they lump it forward, you're sort of ready to go. Defensively, you've got men back, and sort of wait for them to, because if they're playing that direct, they're not going to try and break you down necessarily. They're trying to catch you out. Don't give them a reason to catch you out. Just regroup. But if someone is trying to build up, then go counter press and get it back. I always think when possession's been won, always counter attack. To me, it doesn't matter what the time of the game is. If you're 1-0 up in the 90th minute, go and counter attack. Why not? You can hold shape. I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I always just think, go and counter-attack. Like why? Why not? Because if they've lost possession, they're not going to be in a good defensive position, so go and try and take advantage of it. Now, one big thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is don't ask players to do something they can't do. Now, that can mean position-wise. For example, Berisha here is not the best winger. He can do it, but you wouldn't necessarily... You want to retrain players to play in positions that they have the attributes for. That's not to say, for example, that a player can't be retrained into a different position. They absolutely can be, and you see it, that you might have a central midfielder. I don't know if Kone is going to be a good example, but you'll see central midfielders that would actually make, and especially as they get older, sometimes would make better strikers or in most cases better central defenders. So there's nothing wrong with retraining. This guy actually wouldn't be a terrible ball-playing centre-back, if I'm completely honest. He's still okay in midfield right now, but he could be retrained. But you wouldn't want to ask him to play that now. You'd want to retrain him and then sort of play him, work him into that position. But the main thing I always think is don't ask, particularly defenders, don't ask central defenders to be ball-playing central defenders if they can't do it. Passing of 7, vision of 7, he's not a ball-playing centre-back. I wouldn't, why ask him to do it? Equally with strikers, if you have... So this guy here, as I said before, he's quick, he's nippy. He can get in behind. He can't really finish, but that's a different story. Don't ask him to be a target man. He's not going to hold you the ball up. He's got no strength, no jumping reach. Even if he's coming in to replace a target man, if you play with a target man, if you ask a player to do something they can't do, they're not going to do it. And don't be surprised when they don't play well. You will have to adapt to individual players, even if the team system works really, really well. Injuries and suspensions are going to mean you'll have to adapt the way you're playing. There's no way around that. It's just how it is. You're just going to have to make sure that players are doing things they're able to do. Now, one thing you can do if you do usually play with ball playing centre backs out the back, but you find yourself in a situation where you can't do that. The halfback roll is a really, really good sort of middle ground. What that will basically mean, and if we'll have a look at Connor Chapman here so you can see, he can play especially in the A-League, he can play as a halfback. What that basically means is that when you have the ball, he will drop back in between these two and look to bring it out. He'll basically play as a ball-playing centre-back that's sort of also in front of them shielding. I think it's a really, really useful position, particularly if you have someone that can play it, and if you don't have central defenders who can bring the ball out themselves. There's no real sense to me in having a halfback and the ball-playing centre-back, but one or the other can be really, really effective. Now, one of the big things I always find is, do you need to give, it's a question you need to ask yourself, do you need to give your your attacking players defensive duties? Almost always, yes. Now, what I always like to do is, typically you'll play against you'll play against something similar to this formation, for example. So your fullbacks are going to basically take care of the opposition wingers if they're getting forward, or they will be forward, the opposition wingers. But if their opposition fullbacks get forward, your fullbacks can very quickly become overrun. So what I always like to do in this particular formation is go and tell my wingers to mark the opposition fullbacks. So if they get forward, they're going with them. It's just going to prevent overlaps in wide areas. They won't always do it. If they're forwards, they're typically lazy. But if you tell them to do it, they'll make a token effort to get back, and it'll just kind of help the situation. But I always find if you're playing this sort of formation, I'll move it forward to how it sort of would more typically look, be something like that with a centre back. In this sort of situation, it would be, especially if they're playing sort of a fullback and a winger, your wing backs are very, very vulnerable to being overrun. So what I always do in this situation is I tell my strikers, go and mark the opposition fullbacks and mark them tight as well, because they need to be going back and tracking back. Now that also has a benefit for you in attack, that if they're sort of tracked back in there and sort of stay in this sort of rough area of the pitch and you win the ball back, you have two players in wide areas, you can exploit the flanks, look for overlaps, and your strikers are naturally going to have width. And if you are playing with this sort of number 10 role, you are still going to have somebody that's up there as an out ball. So if you win the ball back, if you need to lump it, you're going to have somebody there. If you want to get it out wide, you're going to have your strikers naturally out there already, because even if they're not properly marking the fullbacks, they're making a token effort. They will be in wide areas. Now, if you want to take advantage of that in transition, distribute to the flanks, and that will get the ball out there nice and early if you do have your fullbacks in wide positions. Now, one thing that I did want to touch on here, well, two things actually. First of all is set pieces, particularly corners, but also from free kicks. You do want to take a little bit of time to set things up here. Now, hopefully it's going to have worked out okay, because I've been changing things around as we go here. But typically what I like to do is I like to have 4 people marking, if you want to have your centre-backs marking tall instead of man, so that your best headers of the ball are essentially marking their best headers of the ball. That's a sensible thing to do. I also like to have 2 people sort of marking zonally. So that typically, if a corner comes in, it's going to come in and around the 6-yard box. Get 2 people in there. A striker is always a good one. They have poor marking, but they can leap and head the ball, just to head the ball away. Not necessarily responsible for a man, just responsible for space to get the ball away. 2 men on the post, typically your fullbacks or your wingbacks, just as a little bit of extra protection. Your goalkeeper there, and I always think you want to have 1 person left up front, typically your paciest guy, best dribbler, and someone on the edge of the area that can sort of run the ball out as well. So typically your 2 best counter-attacking players, 1 on the edge of the area, 1 staying up front, and that way you're even if you're defending a set piece, you're always looking to hit them on the break. And similarly, when you're attacking, get your two centre backs, typically your two best headers, attacking the ball near and far post or near post and deep. Get people in and around, get your strikers lurking in and around the area as well, lurking at the near post, lurking at the far post, attacking the far post, and then somebody marking the goalkeeper. And at the edge, lurking at the edge of the area, you typically want your best long shot. So if the ball does come out, they can just smash it back in. And I've seen, if you watch my Let's Plays, especially from FM, what was the last one, 19, we scored a lot of goals from having someone at the edge of the area just picking up a loose ball and just smashing it back in. And again, you do want to make sure you have people back just to try and protect yourself from counter-attacks. And again, same sort of thing from free kicks. You want to have yourself organised. It just takes a second. If you only have to do it once, just what I always think, just save it. Then you can I haven't got it saved here. There we go. That's because it's direct. I should have one of these ones saved. So you can just load it up, and there it is. It's ready to go for you. So you only really have to do it once, and then you might have to tweak it, with new signings and if different players come in to make sure that your best headers are doing players are in the roles you want them in. But typically, it works out okay. Now there is one other thing that I wanted to catch you up on here to go through. And that is scouting reports and analysis reports. Now, you always want to try and get a data analysis or a data analyst facilities and a data analyst in because it's really, really helpful. But even if you don't, you can see here basically what you're expecting from the opposition team. You can use the team report card to get an idea of what they're going to do. It'll give you an idea here. Their effective through balls, 7 of their last 16 assists in the last 18 games. So if someone's doing a through ball, typically you'll want to drop a little bit deeper to try and not give the ball a space to go through into. Again, if you're sitting deeper and they pass the ball through, there's not a through ball anymore. It's just a pass forward, and as long as it should be being played in front of you. So if teams are good from through balls, typically you'll want to sit a little bit deeper. So you'll get a rough idea from the team report card what you're expecting if you don't have a data analysis facilities. But this can be really useful. You can see here, the overview will give you a rough idea of how they're expecting them to play. You can see the sort of style that you're expecting there as well. But here you'll see, so that's how they played last time out. The heat map, you'll get an idea. You can see defensively that they're quite narrow. The fullbacks tuck in. You'll probably get some love going down the sides of this team because they are a little bit narrow. You can see from the heat map in attack, they do like to attack in wide areas, so you might want to consider defending with more width. You can see here the focus of their attacks as well tends to be from wide areas, so again, you may want to look at attacking with more width. Defending with more width. You can see their passing network here as well. They do pass out from the back sometimes. Typically, they pass. They're patient in midfield. Their centre backs like to pass it forward. If a team is looking to pass, typically I like to play at pressing forward. Just someone just to run around and try and close them down at the back, stop them from doing that. Key passes. This can be good as well to see that a few direct long sort of central balls. In a couple of crosses, but typically, again, that's probably coming back to the through balls. You might want to sit a little bit deeper so that those balls are just being swept up, but they're being played in front of your centre backs, not through them and in behind them. And goal analysis, this is always, I think, important as well. Look at the assist location. I don't typically pay attention to the type of goals because where goals are scored, the goals location doesn't matter. It doesn't really, because what you want to stop is you want to stop the assist. Where are the assists coming from? If you stop the assist, you stop the goal. That's sort of my basic mentality. So again, through balls, you want to sit a little bit deeper. Try and make sure a through ball isn't getting in behind your defense. Crosses as well. With a cross, you typically want to play higher up because typically you want to get to the byline and cross it in. So if someone has really so for them, they concede a lot of crosses. They probably want to play a little bit higher up. They probably sit a little bit too deep. But you see that you want to get the ball wide, get the crosses into the box. So you can really see a lot here from where the assist is coming from. A goal, most of the time, it's going to be a tap-in anyway. A goal is typically going to be a tap-in the center of the penalty area. It doesn't tell you anything. It's the assist. You want to see where the assist is coming from, and that's what you want to stop. So if we go back, and I'll sort of show you what I mean. So if a team has through balls, if you're sitting a little bit deeper, there is nowhere for a through ball to go. Hopefully you kind of understand what I mean by that. Now, I always think as well, stay on feet is a decent, my preferred tackling method. If you get stuck in, I mean, sometimes you have to. Yeah, sometimes you're just frustrated and you want to. But basically, I always think you give away fouls, you give away free kicks, you get yellow cards, and you tend to miss tackles as well. Stay on your feet, make them break you down. Don't dive into tackles. Now, you saw there that they kind of played out from the goalkeeper, not really. I probably wouldn't worry about preventing the goalkeeper from playing out in this situation. But if you get a sort of a line that's a thicker, more solid line from the goalkeeper out, that's when you'd want to look to play or stop them from playing out from the back. But guys, that is basically my tactical breakdown preview tutorial. That's what I'm looking for. So if you have enjoyed that, please, or you found it helpful, please do hit thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're new. And there are other tutorials around as well, so go and check those out if you have found this helpful. And if you have any suggestions for other tutorials, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do to get some of those out for you as well. But until next time, guys, I've been Aussie, and thank you so much for watching. Take care.